Hello, this is Alkesh Nanavati, and today I'm going to walk through a composition that I recently did inside of Fusion 6.4. Fusion is a node-based compositing software used in high-end compositing projects such as broadcast, films. So what you have here is a simple shot, tripod shot using a consumer level camera. This is HV20 by Canon in 24 frames per second. And good thing about tripod or a feature about tripod shot is that it's not actually a 3D in the way that the camera is not moving in perspective. So you can't really tell the distance between two objects, one near the camera, one farther away, because they are both appear to be moving in the same at the same rate. So what did we do with this? The final comp that I'll show you, the final result, is this. So here you have several CG elements. The character himself, he is known as Blue. Some of you may remember him from the book that was published, I think it's called Maya 7 Foundation. I used Maya 2013 for the CG work here, the 3D modeling and animation work for this character. You see the television is turned on now. It has a clip playing. You see the fog here. You see the light. You see the light bouncing off of these elements. And also when he is walking through the lit area, you can see that he is also casting the reflection or the highlights of the lights. So we'll walk through this. Some of these, most of the effects were done in Fusion. We'll use Fusion's 3D viewport and the 3D capabilities to build the scene and relight the scene inside of Fusion. I'll walk through very quickly Maya as to what was done in Maya, not the whole process of modeling and all that, but just the scene setup. And also we'll walk through SynthEyes, which is a 3D tracking software that I use. This is the software that is, or the process I should say, of 3D tracking is the base of this type of projects where you are driving everything off of the tracking data. And you will see soon what I mean by that. But for now, just keep in mind that it's very important to have some accurate 3D tracking data for a scene like this. Alright, so let's see, where do we begin? Let's go all the way to, well, first let me show you the script itself, how this composition looks in Fusion. This is Fusion, by the way, what you're looking at. This is the actual script. This is what ended up happening in this composition to give you that final result that you just saw. And we'll walk through most of this. There is a lot of the volume or the deep compositing going on here, which then feeds into the end results, to do some masking and some fog. We'll see, this is the world position pass that was rendered from Maya, and it was interesting because usually you get world position pass for all the CG work, because you are inside of the CG, whereas if you go back to the original here, this is not CG, this is actually a live footage, right? So in order to have a good representation of where do these objects exist inside of a 3D space, you need a good representation of the space itself, and the way I did this is by blocking this geometry at this parts of the room with some rough geometry, and that geometry was at certain distance away from the camera, which was then used by Maya and then by Fusion in this world position pass. Very quickly, what does this pass look like? If I normalize my viewport here and show you, this is world position pass. This is basically a color range of RGB, and depending on what color you see here, Fusion is able to give you the distance of this particular pixel from the camera through which you are viewing this. So it's sort of a 2D image, but it gives you 3D information about how the space was. And you can see as the camera moves from the left to the right, the shade goes from more orangish green towards blue, and these colors actually tell Fusion which way the camera is moving, and Fusion can use these colors to rebuild the 3D scene inside of Fusion, which then you can use to do all the 3D compositing, including relighting, creating fog, creating certain masks, and it's sort of a new way of compositing if you look at the history of compositing over the last I don't know, few years. So we'll walk through that process, and you can see that the character himself is also colorized here, giving information about where does this character exist in this 3D space, right? So it's a pretty interesting workflow. So the point of this thing is that this space was created using let me normalize again, using this 2D information. So this was and you'll see everything was blocked inside of Maya to create that 3D space, and that came in quite handy in doing some of the relighting, because if this is the shot that comes to the compositor and say, okay, you have to create something that looks early morning-ish with some fog light coming in, and not a very diffused light inside the room, but some very sharp lights casting some sharp specularity on certain surfaces, then you really need those kind of data as to where does this surface exist in the 3D space, because you're going to be putting a light inside of Fusion, and this may not make a lot of sense if you haven't done something like this, but just bear with me and this will become much more clearer. So back to the script. This is the full comp, and we'll walk through every section that you see here to give you that final result, how that came about. And I try to put notes here so that I remember or somebody else gets some idea about what's happening. Alright, so the very first process that we will go through in the next video would be SynthEyes tracking. As I said, for a shot like this where the camera is moving, you need a representation of the space, and the first step in that process is the 3D tracking, which means that you are recreating the camera that you are viewing through into the 3D world, the computer 3D world, which then would move exactly how the original camera would have moved. And that gives you a representation inside the 3D space of the computer software, where you can create objects or do special effects. Then when you match it with your original camera, they both would line up perfectly. It's easier said than done, certainly, and there are a lot of technical aspects that people would need to know. I'm not an expert in that. I don't know all of them, but we'll go through that nonetheless. Alright, so we'll catch up again in the next video. Thanks.